right, Slick Talkers, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Send Squared. If you are looking to grow and create actual personal experiences for your guests, then you need to get Send Squared today. This episode and this podcast is powered by Send Squared. So go to sendsquared.com today to learn more about the hospitality CRM that you need in your toolkit. Welcome back, Slick Talkers. I'm so excited to have Steve Carran on the show. He is one of the founders and podcast hosts of the Modern Hotelier Podcast, which is one of my favorites in the industry from the hotel side of things. And they just put out great content, great quality, and the conversations are super engaging beyond just the normal typical interview. And so I had to have him on. We've been friends for the last couple of years. He's also based out here in Colorado, and it just made sense to put another voice on the scene to geek out a little bit about podcasting. Okay, I'll admit a lot about podcasting in this episode, and then a little bit about hospitality and the current things and trends and topics we're hearing and discussing today beyond our shows. So I hope you enjoyed this episode with Steve Carran from the Modern Hotelier Podcast. And now let's begin. You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, Steve Carran from the Modern Hotelier Podcast. Welcome to Slick Talk. This should have happened years ago, my friend. So I'm so excited to have you. Welcome to the podcast. How are we doing today?
Thank you so much for having me, Will. I mean, I'm just honored to be here. And I'm so excited to sit down and chat with you today.
100%. Me too. And for a quick fun fact for the listeners, you and I are both actually based here in Colorado. So I'm bummed we're not doing it in person, but that's just another excuse to hang out in the future. So Get ready. I'm going to be hitting you up for a coffee or something soon.
Absolutely. We're so close. We're like an hour away from each other. So
I know
we don't have a good excuse. So we'll make it happen.
One of these days. Well, Steve, I'm honestly shocked that it's taken me this long. I also said this to Susan Berry, who is going to be on the show, and a couple other podcasters in the hospitality space. And I'm just shocked that it's taken this long. But dude, I love the story that you guys have, or not the story, but the story of what you guys have built with Modern Hotelier as a podcast, as a media brand. You guys have evolved quite a bit since the early beginning days, which was a podcast under a property management company or a technology software provider in the space. And then you spun it off into its own independent business and went full-time with it back in April, I believe, correct?
Yeah. So a year ago, almost now, we went full-time, I went full-time into doing it. And this year, David, he's moved into more of a full-time role too. So it's all hands on deck.
I love it. Well, tell us the story of how this podcast of yours got started as a kind of podcast for a brand to the independent and like the decision-making process with that, because from my perspective, I've always started my shows or our network shows independently of a brand outside of our own, but that's always been kind of like a fun, interesting area. And so I'm kind of curious just to learn from how that started and what the decision-making process was to spin it off.
Yeah. So I was working for a startup PMS company called Stay Flexi, and I was running the US side of sales for them. And David was advising them. They're an Indian-based company, but really trying to break ground in the United States. So we had a planning session in October of 2021. And this idea of a podcast got mentioned a couple times, but never really had any legs, never really was discussed, more kind of wouldn't that be funny if we did a podcast, like kind of in passing. So when I was putting together our 2022 strategy, I put the podcast in for our marketing strategy. And when that slide came up, it was kind of me and David hosting this podcast. And that's kind of when the first conversation really started. Like, can we produce a podcast? Is this something we want to do? And, that was 3 years ago. And now I feel like a lot of companies are kind of catching on and starting their own podcasts. I feel like almost every week a new podcast comes out, which is great. Love the podcasts in the industry. But we had this idea. And then from there, we kind of were like, okay, we came up with our format that we wanted to do, really highlighting the people behind hospitality, really understanding who they are before and their background before they give their industry and just talk about the industry and kind of best practices in the industry. So once we came up with our format, we're like, well, we don't know anything about podcasting, so we need to find out somebody to help produce this. So through a friend of mine, we got introduced to John. And let me tell you, we would not be where we are without John Boomhofer. He is incredible. I always say he's kind of like the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes. He's making everything happen, but you never really see him, right? Because he's more behind the cameras. But man, he's incredible at what he does. And he really asked us the tough questions. When we were first getting started, like, did we want to do video? What's the goal of the podcast? And, really making us think about it on a deeper level. So we started the podcast April 2022. And then after that first year, it took off. I couldn't believe like the hospitality industry just like welcomed us with open arms, and engagement was good. Audience was growing steadily. So at the end of that year, we actually bought the podcast from Stay Flexi. I was moving to another role. David wasn't advising him. They looked to just focus more on India. So we actually bought the podcast from them and then built it on our own, started to monetize it a little bit more through advertisements. And then April last year, I came over full time to do it. And like I said, David's now doing more of a full-time role. And this past January, we launched Modern Hotelier Media, which is focused a lot more on production video content. So we film hotel experience episodes where it's kind of like MTV Cribs for hotels, where somebody from the hotel will give us a tour. We see kind of the high-end rooms, more of the back end of the operations, things like that. So we have that. We also are focusing more on, we're partnering with TripTease and doing a whole production for the Direct Booking Summit in a few months here. So yeah, really focusing on the production side for hotels, events, and then David and I also speaking engagements where, our production team can come film or film speakers or events as well. So that was my long-winded answer of kind of how we got to where we are today.
All right, Slick Talkers, as you know, this show has been partnered with Hostfully for many, many years, and it's been a great partnership, and we're so excited to keep working with them. But there's a lot of you that we suspect that have not signed up for a demo with Frank or have used the promo code HFM300 for $300 off of your onboarding. So you need to go to the link in the show notes, let them know that Will sent you, schedule a demo with Frank. If you're looking to grow your property management business, whether it's a property management company for short-term rentals or even, dare I say it, hotels, because now they have the multi-listing factor on there. So you need to go to Hostfully. That's just the way it is. So go to the link in the show notes, let them know that Will sent you, grab that promo code HFM300 to get $300 off your onboarding today. Now we're back to the episode. No, I love it. I think it shows a great kind of diverse range of what can happen with the power of amplifying your voice plus the people that you have on your platform. And do want to give a shout out, one, to John, and also to all of our other back-end producers, editors, like anyone that edits a podcast, which thankfully I never have to do ever again. Hopefully, knock on wood. Yeah. It's such a game changer to have someone come in and really take that off your plate. So shout out to all the back-end producers and editors who make all the magic happen behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's crazy all the amount of work that they have to do and how organized they have to be when you're filming hours of content. We were at High Tech last year and we were staying at an Airbnb, and John's like, I just got to go back, got to organize a little bit. And I got a little bit of behind the scenes view of what he really does. And you think it's like, oh, you record an episode, do a little editing and boom, you're done. That's not it. it at all. There is so much that goes into it. So like you said, shout out to those guys. They're the heroes of podcasting, and definitely wouldn't be where we are without them.
100%. Well, that leads into a great kind of segue for me, because I also believe 2022, like you said, was a great year for podcasts in our industry. Audience was great. Sponsorships and advertising deals were flowing like crazy. It was a year that I don't think I maximized for myself personally. I was like, man, this was like, if I could go back, that's the one thing I would go do, is just like recapture that type of attention and momentum that the industry gained with these types of mediums and new pop-ups happening. And so I want to kind of ask you, just in terms of podcasting is such a niche industry. Like you said earlier, there's a ton, like, feels like a podcast is popping up every day now in hospitality, from short-term rentals to hotels to F&B to overall travel, you name it, right? And for me, we kind of had, now things have shifted. We're not in 2022 anymore. It's 2025.
No, we're not.
Ad dollars and average or sponsorship dollars are a little slow or a little dry. Everyone and their grandmother wants to be a guest on the show and pitches randomly. You get 1,000 horrible pitches a day. And then, there's some, I would say there are some darker sides of this in the industry, right? There's very few full-time podcasters in the hospitality category. There's you, David, me, not even Josiah McKenzie anymore. We have very, very, very few full-timers. And so obviously I could tell by the pivot that you described earlier, going into modern hotelier media rather than just the podcast. So you guys are obviously expanding, but can you maybe just like under the hood, and I also have another question, but I'll come back to it later, under the hood, just in terms of the podcasting landscape in hospitality. I know it's not great right now. I will say that, like, audience is also hard to gain traction once you've been around. I've been around 7 years doing it. You've been around 3. Like there's a certain point where things do get a little tough and you have to make some changes. So kind of tell me what your thoughts are around all of this in terms of podcasting and hospitality.
Yeah. Like, so a year ago I came full time to this, and I'm like, I don't even know if we're going to be able to do this full time, but hey, let's give it a shot. Like, I remember a conversation I called my mom, and I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea. And the one thing that she said to me, she's like, I just have a question, and this may be a dumb question, but say you can't do the podcast full time and it doesn't work out. Can you go back and get a job like you have now? And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. She goes, why not try it? Like, if it fails, great, but at least And I'm like, that is so true. So we like dove headfirst into, getting sponsors and really focus on growing and monetizing. And it was I always say it's the easiest, hardest thing I've ever had to do. Like, people last year were chomping at the bit to get in front of podcasts and to, really get their message out through podcasts. Kind of this like new thing that companies have been doing is putting money into podcasts, and it's kind of finally being worked into marketing budgets, which was great. And last year it was flourishing. We sold out for the year in September, so like it was awesome. And then this year January was great. February was a really tough month, and March was. We picked back up a little bit, but I feel like it's kind of with everything, there's ebbs and flows, right? And we have heard, with kind of the temperament of where we are right now, people are holding onto their budgets a little bit more tightly, really focusing and being more selective where they want to spend those dollars, and making sure that the ROI they get in return is valid. So kind of more of those experiential dollars, where it was like, oh, this sounds cool. We've never done podcasts, but hey, let's try it. We have some extra budget to play around with. There's a little bit less of that I've been finding, where there are it's a lot more detailed questions like audience. And, that's a pretty common one. How do you size your audience who's listening? But people are diving a lot more deeper into those questions, making sure that the audiences are right. And, just being a little bit more tight with their budget right now. So I think kind of like what we were talking about, all these podcasts are coming up. There's a lot more podcasts to evaluate. right? When companies are thinking about doing podcasts. But I also think we've talked about this. It's almost going to be the survival of the fittest at this point. Now there's a ton of podcasts, and somebody told me that if you do over 5 podcasts, you're in the top 5% of podcasts in the world. And if you do over 100, you're in the top 0.5% or something like that. And that just shows people get into podcasting. They think it's easy. They think it's, this cool new trend that they can just print money doing. And then they realize what goes into podcasting. It's being consistent, posting every day, releasing episodes consistently like you've done for 7 years. You have, daily episodes going out, which is, we do 1 to 2 a week. So daily to us that's crazy. But it's the landscape, podcast landscape, I feel like it's changing a little bit, but at the same time, I think there's still interest, and people are definitely still interested in it and exploring opportunities around it. What have you seen this year so far? Kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I would definitely say the same thing. Like last year, end of last year, I think we started to notice signs of quite some significant slowdowns, right? Lack of renewals and longer term partnerships that we've had, or I was going to ask you this question, but kind of to give you my answer on it first is the earlier days, I would say I was very analytical, right? I was like, all right, this is our audience. This is how much they consume. This is our listen through rate. I was giving all the data to our partners and to potential sponsors or whatever. And they would give me the response of we just want brand awareness. We don't care. We don't care about leads and generating not revenue, but what's the term I'm trying to look for? Generating interest or leads kind of funnel type situation. And I was like, great, I'll take your money. We'll make great ads. We'll report back to you every month. It's a perfect partnership. And now it's very, 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 we just want to see ROI. And if we don't see ROI, well, there we go. Then we're cutting it. And it's not something worth evaluating again or trying to continue going down. And for me, I think that approach, the pendulum has swung so significantly from we just want brand awareness to we just want ROI, that there has to be a middle ground. And I've tried explaining that to a lot of our partners. And we have a great set of partners currently at Hospitality FM and even past ones who aren't currently actively spending money with us, but love the work and love the product or love the conversations. And it's really hard to explain that, especially when, it's all right, I can give you ROI, but these are the steps we have to do in order to ensure that. And you can't see, it's not like you were saying earlier, it's not an instant success when you start a podcast or when you sponsor one, right? The average, study shows that it takes 7 to 10 touch points or listening points through a podcast medium to have a listener actually actively engage with the sponsor or advertiser, whether it's signing up for a newsletter, clicking the link in the show notes, actually using the coupon code, which never happens, or whatever it might be, right? And so education plus getting creative and actually having our measurables. But I would love to know, how do you guys respond to we just want ROI? If we don't see ROI, we're not participating or wanting to participate. How do you guys get them more in the middle? And then also, to put a thumbtack in this question now, I want to hear about how you guys bought the podcast. That for me is a whole new process. If you're comfortable sharing, if not, for listeners, we'll bleep out some stuff. But yes, I would love to know how do you guys manage the balance of brand and ROI from a lead kind of standpoint.
Yeah. So I always tell people we're more of a content company than I guess advertising company. I'd like to say you're paying us to produce great content that we'll distribute to our audience, which is hoteliers, right? You're going to get in front of that audience. Depending on the package, you'll get in front of them multiple times, but that's one avenue we provide. But what we really provide is the content on the back end. John does such a good job on production. And this is why I always say we wouldn't be able to do this without him, because he edits the episodes, him and his team, and all of them come out very professional. So what we do is say, hey, you come on our podcast, we give you a content package, you get images from the podcast, quote graphics. So if you said something, it's just an image with your quote around it. And then we give you videos as well, most of them under a minute. So that way you can reuse that content on your sites. We've had companies reuse it on their websites. Some companies have asked us for a bunch of timestamp. If you want more content than we give you, just send us timestamps and we'll send that over to you, clip those videos. So we've had companies that are like, hey, can I have like 10, 15 more videos? We're like, absolutely. So then they just use that content for the next 6 months. And it's like, you spent, a few $1,000s for a 30 to 45 minute podcast, and you can use that content for months and months and months to be viewed as a thought leader, to promote your brand or promote your products, your brand, any events that you're going to be at. So it's a very easy way for companies to promote themselves without the heavy lift, right? They don't have to come up with questions. They don't have to get the high quality cameras. They don't have to, they don't have to come up with any of the content. We do that all for them. So I kind of position ourselves as more of a content company, like I said, than an advertising company where they get that content, but they also can rely on us for distribution. But we have had quite a few people who come back and they're like, oh, we got sales leads from you guys. We had one AI company, they came back, big property management company heard them from their podcast, and they reached out to a GM and it's like, check these guys out. And they're signing a pilot with them right now. And then we had a startup. It's a one-person show. She got 4 leads within 2 weeks. And then she hit us back the next week and she goes, Steve, I don't know if you know this, but I just got a sales lead from Dubai. And it was my 5th one in a month. Like, I didn't know if you knew you had reach in Dubai, but just letting you know you do. And I'm like, that's what we want to hear. We love hearing that. Like, our goal is to put you in front of hoteliers and people that sponsor with us. And, we're lucky to have a pretty engaged audience that reacts well and acts on the things that they're interested in if they hear it on the podcast.
Yeah. And that goes back to the sentiment of what you said earlier when John asked you, like, what's the purpose of the show? What is the goal? Like, that work carries through and those are the results you see. And I'm curious, just because we talked about this on our pre-chat, and this is something I'm still kind of like forming my own opinion or thoughts around. For the listeners, if you weren't expecting this much podcast talk, I promise we're going to get into industry stuff soon. But one of the questions I had also earlier for you, outside of buying the podcast back from Stay Flexi, is the quality of production and how important that is. Because right now, what I'm kind of struggling with as a network, not just as an individual show or creator, is that with so many individuals out there, even beyond our scope and even within ours, if I'm being honest, the quality of camera equipment and microphones has changed a lot since I started 7 years ago, right? I started with a $25 mic, Anchor.fm, and that was it, right? Like, it was very much, and I was recording on Skype with no video, horrible. Like, the mic sucked. It was a bad situation, but it still worked. But now, like, I don't think anyone, the listening behavior has changed. People don't want to listen to what they feel like is a Zoom call. And I think the, audio quality, the video quality, the social media content that gets pushed out, like you guys are doing with your packages, is just so important. And I have a hard time with new podcasts every day popping up. Not saying our mission is to amplify voices. I want people to start podcasts, but I will say I want people to start them with high quality in mind, because it makes the rest of us all look good. And then when we're all pitching sponsors, whether it's us as a network or you as an individual, it's only going to benefit when you have a great comparable set next to you that isn't a night and day difference in terms of quality, not only just in the production, but not also conversation, right? Like, you have to be a good host. You have to have good guests. You have, like, there are tiers to this game. But I would love to know, how do you feel about what I call quote unquote hobby podcast hosts that come in, they start podcasts, and then you're over here like slaving away with a team, overhead, do this full time as your stream of income. Like, it's got to be, I don't know, for me it's hard because it's like I want to help those people, but then they're like, no, I'm going to do it and figure it out, and then I don't need to spend all the money, or I don't need to spend this extra time, I don't need to think about it this way, and then they just kind of like do their own thing, which is, again, it's fine, but it does, I believe, hurt the rest of us who are trying to make this legit.
It's a tricky balance, and kind of like what you said, I encourage, if you're a podcaster, just to get out there and try it, right? Like, our iPhones have awesome cameras in them. Like, you can use that and have a good quality visual podcast, but the mic, like, that is the thing. Like, make sure you can hear yourself properly, right? I mean, there's nothing worse than listening to a podcast where it's like you're struggling to hear, you turn up YouTube, you turn up your phone all the way, and you're still struggling to hear them. So like the camera, I think, is an easy fix, but maybe get a mic, or see how, if you can do it on just your iPhone where you can hear, fine. But I do think, making sure you have at least a nice video quality to do it, that's the way to go. But the quality, I understand, but like what gets me is when people are like, oh, I'm starting a podcast, and they build up all this hype, and then they release just like 4 episodes, and then you don't hear from them for 3 months, and then they come back and they're like, we're back, and release 4 more episodes. And it's like, you got to stay consistent. Like that's my whole thing. Like, that's how, I guess, in my thought process, it's like, okay, these guys are here to stay. They're producing content. I'm seeing their stuff on a regular basis. So that's to me how I guess I can tell like who's really serious about podcasting by, how consistent they are. And like, I talk to Glenn Houseman at trade shows all the time. We run into each other, and I talked to him like, what's the hardest part for you? He's like, it's consistency. It's doing it every day. And he's been doing it and this too, for doing it for 7 years, right? Like, that's the hardest part. I've only been doing it for half your time, so I have no excuse on my end, but it is that posting every day, no matter what. I was traveling in Portugal, and I'm, posting at like 8 p.m. in Portugal, so it hits the US in the morning and stuff like that. So it's no excuses. You just got to be consistent and make sure that content is getting out there. But if it is high quality, that is definitely a plus.
All right, Slick Talkers, I have something that I want to talk to you guys about really quickly that I haven't mentioned on the show quite enough, I believe. Maybe. Who knows? We'll find out. But if you listen to our Good Morning Hospitality podcast, then you'll understand that the Good Morning Hospitality crew and myself have created, in partnership with Well and Good Professionals, if you know of Jonathan Wicks, we have created our own coffee brand called Well and Good Morning Coffee. So if you are a hotelier or a vacation rental manager and you want these 3.5 ounce bags of premium quality coffee that is certified organic, then you can go to the link in the show notes under the Well and Good Morning Coffee tab, and you can order a bundle of these for your properties, for your hotel, you name it. We even have wholesale offerings for hotels and independents that want to get 5-pound bags or more. So hit me up for that information. And then, of course, our 12-ounce bags for your personal use. I am fueled by Well and Good Morning Coffee every day. I have a 12-ounce bag on subscription from our website, and it makes it really easy for me to ensure that I'm having good premium quality coffee while I'm recording these amazing episodes for you. So go to the link in the show notes, please, and thank you for supporting the Well and Good Morning Coffee brand out there. We're so excited to work with Well and Good Professional Services as well on this, as they have helped put this coffee in over 18 different states across the country. It's just been incredible to watch and grow. So thank you for tuning into this episode. And now we're back to the episode with Steve Carran. Yeah, the consistency piece is where I struggle with the stat that you said earlier on. If you post 5 times or 5 episodes, you're in the top 5%. If you post more than 10, you're in the top if you're, what would you say, 50, 100?
I think it was 20.
20.
100, no, maybe it is 100. 100, you're in the top 0.5%. I don't know. Those might be wrong numbers. So don't come after me in the comments.
No, for sure. That stat has changed a ton. Like every time I go to Podcast Movement or any other podcast conference, right? Like it's if you're past 10 episodes or whatever. The reason why I hate that stat is, one, there's so much dead space on Apple and Spotify of those podcasters who posted 4 episodes, right? And so everyone thinks I'm going to be a top podcaster once I get to 10 episodes. No, that's not how it works. And like that stat for me is a vanity metric in my head. It's not real.
It is. 100%.
What really matters is your downloads and how those are growing, your streams now that Spotify is doing video and audio separately and not doing an RSS feed. All these things, right? And like your views, your email lists, the super important things. I look at it the same way as building a hotel or short-term rental management company. You have a hosting platform, which is your property management software. You have your OTAs like Airbnb or Expedia. That's your Apple and Spotify. Your back-end tools, your revenue dynamic pricing, and all these things like are your editing softwares and your distribution tools and all the fun stuff, right? But it's not that simple. And I just think there's so much dead space out there that if you're really going to think about starting a show and coming from a company that truly believes in amplifying voices, think long and hard. If you can't do the show for a year for free, don't do it. That's my advice. Curious what your take is.
No, I agree 100%. I agree. And like, you might find out that that's your passion. And I think we've got lucky. Like, I didn't know I liked podcasting 5 years ago. I never had a podcast. This is my first podcast I've ever done. But like, as soon as we started recording, and I think like a few episodes in, I'm like, this is awesome. Like,
you're
it's
like, this
so is fun. It's cool. And like, my favorite part is just how people come on and how open they are, especially in hospitality, right? Like, we work in one of the best industries, but they just open up, and it's awesome to hear. Sometimes somebody, you've been friends with them for 5 years, but then they come on your podcast and I'm learning things that I had no idea about them. Just because, we're there to ask questions. We're there to find out more about that person. And not many times in life are we just sitting down and it's like, okay, I'm going to ask you 15 questions here to learn more about you and where you work. We just don't do that enough in life. So like, I think we really have one of the coolest jobs out there where we just get to learn about people and things in the hospitality world. So that's my little 100%. Pitch for being a podcast host.
I love it. I always think, and I haven't said this on the show, but my kind of saying to people is, curiosity killed the cat. So thank God it has 9 lives, because as a podcaster, you have to be so curious in terms of pulling that thread to get the person to, it's really like not manipulation, but is conversation as an art, right? Where you can steer things and pull a string or a thread or a comment or even an opposing question or maybe a controversial view on something, and how you can just steer it to a direction that you want the audience to be like, oh my gosh, like, how do we get down this great topic that I actually didn't know much about, or have been so passionate to hear more of, or, whatever that might be. So I 100% agree with you. It's very much the art of conversation. But as I promised to the listeners, I'm going to make the shift after this one question, because I said I was going to ask you this question. Tell me about buying the podcast from the company that started. So I know for the listeners, they're maybe not used to the talk of like IP and intellectual property between media companies, and when you create this and who owns what, and all the certain things. So we'd love to know. Can you talk us through that process on how you bought a podcast?
Yes. So, well, like I said, I was moving on to a new position from Stay Flexi, and they just were shifting priorities to focus more on India. And we were talking, what happens to the podcast? And David and I, we loved it. We were hooked after that. Halfway through the first season, we're like, this is awesome. We love doing this. Saw a lot of potential, especially kind of where we saw podcasting going, that it was just going to get bigger. And that's what we've seen. YouTube is investing millions, billions of dollars on the podcast platform. Now they're the largest podcast channel. They've beat Apple, they beat Spotify, and now YouTube kind of stands alone on this hill with the video content as well as, the shorts and things like that. So they've invested a ton of money. So we kind of saw this as an opportunity, like, hey, this could be just something, fun that we do on the side. Maybe it turns into a full-time gig. I don't think we were even thinking that yet. But we talked to, Venkat Sakamari. He is still one of my good friends. He was a CEO. He is a CEO of Stay Flexi still. And like, hey, you want to continue doing this podcast, understand it doesn't really make sense to be under Stay Flexi now that y'all are focusing on India. Most of our audience is in America. So we chatted with him, and he was like, yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. It made total sense. And we just kind of talked about what that would look like. And like you said, who owns the content was a big thing. So we had two options. Either we keep this podcast that we've had for a year, or we start a new podcast. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we had a good first year, got some recognition. No, I love our name. I like our logo. I don't want to go through that all again. So David and I talked, and we're like, let's buy it from them. So we just kind of went back and forth, and it was pretty simple. We came up with a price that we thought was fair, and they thought was fair. And then we bought it from them, and we paid them over the next year to finally for it to be ours. And then we gave them some free sponsorship as well and stuff like that. But it was more at that time, we were passionate about it. First year, it's kind of like, it was a new thing. It was a new shiny toy that we loved, and we're like, this is a lot of fun. We want to keep doing it. So, we kept doing it, and now it's turned into, I always say now I feel like we're a Series A. We've landed. We know the concept works, but now it's expanding and really growing the media side and the podcast as well. So it was a fun experience. I've never bought a podcast or a company or anything to this scale. So it was a great learning lesson. And I know like David has been instrumental in this, having somebody who has gone through large scale buys like this, and having somebody like this with so much more experience than I've had. I always tell people, like, if I was doing this by myself, Modern Hotelier would not be where it was without John and David and their advice. And it's really been an awesome project, and we all get along. We travel together. Like it's been an awesome ride for the last 3 years.
For sure. No, I love that. And very well said. Very well said. And you made me make a mental note. I wanted to get David on the show as well. So shout out to David and the whole team you guys have over there at Modern Hotelier. Okay, now I promised. Here we are. We're shifting gears. We're now in third, and I want to talk to you about the industry, the perks of having a podcast, whether it's full time or not. Right? Like, you get to hear. You have a platform. You have a platform to be in conversation. I have secrets I'm taking to the grave, Steve, because of how entrusting people are with information after the recording button is gone, right? Like, when they have a good experience with you, it's like all the skeletons come out of the closet, and you're like, whoa, like, I did not know this was going on with this person or this company, and and it's just like a lot can happen, right? And so
yeah,
I would love to know, you guys have built such a successful platform, not just as an individual show, but as a now media company that produces content at a higher level. I'm sure you're feeling the same thing that we're feeling in terms of these conversations happening. And a lot of people come to me at the end of the year or some point of the year, I'm like, what are the conferences we go to? Who are the people we need to be talking to? Like, what are the things we need to be focusing on? Because there's a lot of noise. And when you become trusted in the way that podcasting allows as such an intimate platform, you really truly are the platform itself. So I would love to know, for your side of the aisle, I guess, is, I've been very heavy short-term rentals. I'm going more hotel hospitality focused rather than just short-term rentals because of my kind of awareness of like, okay, like, I'm too niche right now for myself, at least, and went a little away from my roots. But what are you guys hearing? What are the conversations happening behind the hotel side, whether it's from the brand's perspective, the OTAs, the independents, the technology providers? I'm sure you guys have a ton of like hot topics that are kind of hitting your guys' feed at the moment, or your text threads from individuals hitting you up with some juicy gossip. So I would love to know what's hot right now.
Yeah. Also, before I get into this, the one thing about that I did not expect from podcasting is people come up to me and they're like, I feel like I know you. Like, I know we've 100%. Never met. I just feel like I know you so well because I listen to you every week. And I just know kind of your background and how you got here and just how you talk. And I'm like, it's a very personable, which I didn't really think about it until I've been in this space. And I'm sure you get it too, where it's like people have been listening to you for 7 years. I mean, that's that's a long, almost a decade, right? So like
100%.
that was one of the things where I thought was really, really cool. How even though we're on the other sides of the screen right now, it's still we're in somebody's ear when they're traveling, mowing the lawn, running errands. They're spending their free time listening to us, which I don't take for granted at all. I think time is the best gift you can have. So shout out to everyone that listens to Will and I.
100%. Shout out to you guys. Seriously, would not be here without you or our producers and editors. So keep going. Please don't give up on us. If I could share, can I share a funny story with you really quick?
Yeah,
I think it goes perfectly with what you said. And I have not shared this on the show. So anyone who feels like they're going to get to know me personally this is a personal kind of story. But back during COVID, I started dating someone who was on the show Married at First Sight, which is on Netflix, and it was a Lifetime show. It was a reversal of Love is Blind, right? Where you get married before seeing them. And then you go throughout the whole process. So
Married at First Sight, I'm a fan. Oh, so I watch.
Dude, okay.
My wife and I watch it, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Perfect. So you'll get this. So season 10, and shout out to Mindy. We're still good friends after all the stuff that happened. But anyways, so I started dating this girl named Mindy Scheiben, who was on season 10, and we end up FaceTime dating to then meeting in person, meeting other cast members on her season, and then eventually going to Mexico for like a week or so. And when her and I were talking at one point over dinner, we got interrupted by someone coming up to her and be like, "Oh my gosh, are you Mindy from the TV show?" and blah, blah, blah. And they started talking to her like they knew her, right? Like, oh my gosh, like they were best friends from kindergarten and haven't seen each other in 3 years and picked it up right where they left off. And that person goes away. And it happens again. And then we're at the airport and we're in an Uber or whatever, right? Like she got recognized so many times. And we had a conversation over that dinner of like, I was like, man, is it weird for you to have that? Or is that a cool feeling? And this was COVID, like, right? The world shut down, like flights were $30 to go anywhere almost. And so, it was such a weird experience in time anyways. And I just started going full time. I went full time at the end of 2019. So I hadn't done industry conferences yet or anything. And she's like, yeah, it's really weird because so much of my life was exposed. So many people from interviews I've done after the show or podcasts or whatever, they feel like they know me. So they come up to you and they kind of forget about like the meeting a person for the first time etiquette, where it's like, shake their hand, introduce yourself, right? Like all of that goes out the window. And not saying that's what happened to me, but like the first industry conference I went to after COVID, dwindled down and people were going to conferences and events again. I had someone come up to me at a conference and be like, "Will Slickers, how are you?" And doing the same thing that she kind of experienced, right? Like, "Oh my gosh, like, how's your brother? I haven't, heard about him for a while," or like whatever, right? And you're like, who are you? What's your name? Like, and we all had masks on, and I'm like, what's going on right now? And it happened over and over and over and over again. And I finally understood how Mindy was feeling, because at the time when she was telling me that, I was like, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, I bet that's the best feeling in the world. But then after a while, you're like, all right, it's kind of weird, but kind of cool. Like it's got its pros and cons, but I don't know. That's my story. So yeah,
that's a great story. I'm one of those people. I love it. I think it's like when I don't know. I think of a couple of people. They like ran up. They're like, I listen to your podcast all the time. I'm like, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Like I understand. It's kind of fun because if I saw some of the podcasts I listen to, I'd kind of be excited to see them too, especially if it's one that you enjoy and listen to. So I totally understand the perspective. I think it's pretty fun when like I'm at an airport or like happened at a restaurant where somebody's like, "Do you have a podcast?" And I'm like, I do. And they're like, "I listen to it," and stuff like that. So it's happened a couple of times. Like if I'm at a hotel with my wife, they're like, "Yeah, I feel like seeing you." And it happened to David in Europe. Somebody came up and they're like, we've just met, but like your voice sounds so familiar. And this guy next to him pulls out his phone and pulls up the Modern Hotelier page and is like, "This is where he's from." And he's like, "That's it. I listen to you." So I always think it's kind of funny because, you don't really know who's listening all the time. And sometimes I feel like I lose a little bit perspective on, people are actually listening to our podcast on a regular basis. 100%. So it's always a cool reminder. And So it's fun.
Yeah, 100%. And especially when you see the numbers on the dashboard, but then you meet them in person or through an engagement online, right? Like it really does personalize it and make it less, oh, it's not just a download. Like this is an actual person, like you said, who's dedicated their free time to listen to me or to listen to, the people on our shows. And so it is humbling. It's also really cool. I love it when it happens in person with people that like friends or family, right? Like when you're on the plane, like I had someone say from Ambridge Hospitality, and they're like, "Are you Will from Slick Talk?" I think they actually referenced Good Morning Hospitality at the time, but I was like, "Yeah, 100%." They're like, "I'm listening to your show right now, and I'm working on my budget. I love the content. Just want to say what's up." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool." And my dad was right there, and he's like, "So cool." He's like, "What? People know you?" To you walk on a plane and people are like, "You have a podcast?" So yeah, it's totally fun. It's totally fun. Coming back, great. Shifting gears. Sorry to go down that
technology hotels.
Yes. What's going on? What's the hot goss going on?
Man, we gotta. I feel like there's 3 things we hear all the time. It's AI. That obviously is the huge topic, I feel like, end of this year. But now, I'm excited to go to more hotel shows and see all these new AI companies because there's AI for everything now, which I think there's going to be not a shift, but who really can perfect AI and really make it efficient for hoteliers, and not necessarily replacing hoteliers, but enhancing their work experience. So those mundane tasks. And, the one that gets me is as we're working on travel and stuff, I'm cold calling hotels to talk to them. And it's crazy how long it takes for that phone to be picked up, or sometimes it doesn't even get picked up. And that's no fault of hoteliers. And that's not what I mean by that at all, because they're busy. They have 8 people in line at the front desk that are waiting to check in. But for example, what phone system is going to come along that doesn't sound like AI, sounds like people in wherever that hotel is located? Does the dialect sound the same? Does it sound like a real person? Because that's where it's going to be, is not those AI voices where you pick up and it's like, this is AI, don't want to deal with it. But when you actually call a hotel, you're talking to AI and you have no idea. So I think who's going to perfect it, who's going to really help do a great job with that. That's a big one. And I think that also plays into personalization as well. We always are talking about how to give guests a more personalized experience. And I'm not talking about your name on the TV when you walk in, but remembering their name when they come to the hotel. I mean, you travel. How many times do you stay at a hotel that you've been to 5-10 times? And they're like, "Is it your first time here?" And it's like, "No, I've been here 10 times, and I might have just been here a month ago," Yeah. So how do we make, kind of like how we feel when people come up to our podcast and we feel special? How do you make your guests feel special through personalization? Mm-hmm. And then I think the last point is hyperlocal experiences. How can you tie that community into your hotel? I stayed at one recently, which you're familiar with, I'm sure, the Raleigh Hotel. Have you ever stayed in that hotel?
No, I haven't stayed, but I really want to. They crush. They crush. Yeah, they're good.
Incredible. 2 of my buddies came in from DC and we went to March Madness in Colorado, and they were blown away by that hotel. They couldn't, they said, I'm not kidding, probably 10, 15 times, "This hotel is awesome." Thanks, Steve. You're the hotel guy. Thanks for picking a good one. And I went, yeah, no problem. They made it easy. But they incorporated, whatever. But the lobby they incorporated not only Colorado, but Denver. They're right next to Coors Field. It is all baseball themed. They have those erector sets where baseballs come down and hit different levers and turn around and stuff like that. So they have just made the lobby not only a place to hang out that makes you feel comfortable, where you can grab a cup of coffee. They have a square right outside of their hotel that are connected to a ton of different restaurants, bars, where you can watch the Rockies game right outside their hotel and have food and drink, things like that. They have made it a whole experience. While when you walk in, you're like, this is a Colorado hotel. You feel that connection immediately when you walk in. So that's kind of an example of how, you can partner with the community and really give it that feel of hyper local. But when you travel, you want to get the feel of the locals. You don't want to go to a chain. At least I don't like to go to chain restaurants when I travel. I like to find out, if you live here, who's got the best tacos, who's got the best seafood, who's got the best ribs. So I like to understand where the locals are eating so I can go there too. So, how can hotels partner with those different local restaurants, local experiences? So it's easier on the guests when they're planning kind of their itinerary. So a little bit more of a one-stop shop than, trying to figure out everything to do on your own. So I would say those two things. And last thing on the technology point, I would just say APIs are huge. I think hoteliers are finally getting sick of these siloed technologies that don't communicate effectively, or they got to do workarounds, things like that. I think if you're building technology right now, you need to make sure you can work with the other systems seamlessly.
Yeah. I love that you said that. You give me so many talking points on the last, part of the episode, but it is all good. I love the Raleigh Hotel. It's a great example because I do believe it's the more the property can become more of the destination itself rather than the actual destination it's in. That's where you've mastered it. And then the other part, kind of going into what you just said, but data and technology right now, I know for sure it's the same issue on the short-term rental side, right? You and I chatted about this, on our pre-chat. The technology side of the industry, it was like everyone had a cool idea. They found a way to fund it, to create it and build it. And then no one looked around, kind of like looked up and saw like who was building what and how they were building it in order to ensure that they communicated right. I don't have a lot to say on to the solution of it yet, other than I'm working on it with a big group of people, including, I'll just say that, working on something that does change that outcome, because I do see how much of an issue it is for the listeners of our shows, for the actual people at conferences that you and I get to talk to all the time. And honestly, these aren't things I don't think vendors or technology companies are truly getting told, right? Like, yeah, your product's pretty and great, but like, how does it integrate the data to my operational software? So that way I do know that Steve has not checked in for the first time today, but 5 times in the last 3 months, right? Like, I don't know. It's just if you're a hotelier or you're a hospitality entrepreneur and your goal, and you're doing this for the passion of capturing moments in a bottle, right? You're helping people have experiences. You're creating a destination. You're not in it to become a tech expert, an IT person. You're not getting into to become, an AI expert or whatever the situation is. Yes, you become a generalist in all these areas as you use the tools. But if you're a true hospitality enthusiast, expert, whatever we want to call you, you're in the game to capture moments in a bottle for your guests. Like, that is the true, genuine, like, what makes me or many of the listeners of our shows wake up every morning. And so technology, in order to have that personalization that isn't your name on the TV when you walk in or whatever, the tech has to talk to each other. APIs have to be standard. The data has to flow better between systems in order to ensure that Steve isn't being missed at checkout or check-in as a repeat guest that can get a cocktail or can get a blah, blah, blah for free, or the next coffee on me in the morning, or whatever the situation might be. That little moment that leads into, again, a bigger moment of conversation and getting to know you, and then all of a sudden just enhancing that experience and that friendship. It's got to change. And so I'm curious, our hoteliers, especially on the independent side, I think the brands are their own beasts of their own, but on the independent side, how many, I guess, hoteliers or brands or people are coming up to, like, how much of this is a conversation within the people that you're talking with?
Definitely a big conversation. Definitely. Okay. I think all the hotels are trying to figure out how to personalize things even more. And I didn't even have this planned, but like, one thing, we were just in San Diego. And we stayed, I don't know if you're familiar with the Lafayette Hotel.
Oh, there? Yes. Very nice hotel.
Okay. So we stayed there. And one of my favorite parts of that stay, it obviously a very extravagant, awesome hotel. But you know what they did? They put my name on the letterhead. And no tech, obviously you need technology to know that my name was there. But like, I saw this and I'm like, this is absolutely incredible because, if I was staying and had a little bit more time to write a letter, like nobody writes hand letters anymore. It's all email, stuff like that. I was like, oh man, I should write my mom or friend a note or something like that. Like, how cool would that be? But I just had to take that because I'm like, it doesn't have to be technology. It can be a handwritten note. It can be, I stayed at the Stanford Hotel in London, and they made the Modern Hotelier logo out of chocolates, like and like had a handwritten note.
Cool.
Like, it's stuff like that doesn't need, you don't need to like find this technology lightning in a bottle or anything like that. It can be like just simply remembering their names and things like that. But I think they're one of the hotels, they're doing it right, and they know how to make their guests feel special, one of a kind, that this room, hey, we know who's staying in it, and we wanted to make it personal just for you. So I think everybody's trying to be more personal, and people are like, what technology can help me do that? But maybe take a step back and be like, here's things that we can do without technology that maybe take 5 more minutes, but hey, it's going to better reviews, more repeat guests, which more revenue, things like that. So I definitely talked about, but I think maybe focusing on how we can do it outside of technology. And that's the Lafayette kind of opened my eyes to that. Like, that was not a personalized text message. It wasn't anything like that. It was my name on a letterhead, and it went a long ways for me. So yeah, it's definitely something talked about, but I think we need to get a little creative with how we do it.
For sure. Well, I'm rereading. I'm kind of treating it as like my Bible right now, the Setting the Table by Danny Meyer. And one of my favorite concepts that he talks about, and Will Guidara talks about in Unreasonable Hospitality, and it gets said a lot, but I don't believe there's obviously service and hospitality. Service is black and white, hospitality is the color. But I also believe in what Danny Meyer was talking about in terms of the one size fits all versus a one size fits one. And I think like what your example of that letterhead and your name having your name on that letterhead, that's the one size fits one, right? Like, you can do that at scale for all your guests, but that's still a very personal, at least from your perspective, a very personal touch point that isn't anticipated, isn't expected, truly isn't even thought of, to be honest. Like you said, who writes letters anymore? But at the end of the day, it's still cool. Like, I would have grabbed that paper too. I would probably never written on it, but it would be here in my office. But I think, when one size fits one and you take that approach and you come up with that customization, a Modern Hotelier logo, I think it goes back, and if I can reverse engineer my kind of statement right now, is it goes back to the anticipation of the arrival. I think that's where hospitality has really lost a lot of its uniqueness or creativity, or even kind of moat, is that when you have 50 arrivals today, that's a lot of one. That could be a good amount of busyness, right? Where there's going to be a line of people trying to check in or doing whatever. But at that one size fits one possibility, and you're able to anticipate their arrival and have a team behind the scenes, or even just part of their shift checklist, instead of doing morning to afternoon shifting of the tech and the software, or running night audit, we should enable our agents or concierge or whatever we want to call them. In my head, when I have a hotel, they're going to be called moment makers. They're going to have a list.
Love that.
We're going to have a list of all of our arrivals. We're going to try to get as much information as possible from whatever technology that makes that possible and streamlined. And we're going to try to get to know our guests personally on a one-to-one level and see what we can do. What moments can we make? And upon arrival, upon check-in to the room, throughout their stay, that's where the art, I think, of hospitality has been kind of lost in kind of our post-COVID era of cut everything at all costs to then now AI everything at all costs. It just like the art of the arrival and anticipation of our guests sometimes I think is overlooked, and that's where you could truly find, with tech, no tech, whatever, the ability to hit that one size fits one.
Yeah. And like, think about it. If you're traveling for business, you travel way different, or at least I do. I don't want to talk for you, but I travel way different for business than I do for leisure. When I travel for business, it's like, I have probably some place to be very soon. Leisure, I am chilling. I am going to pull up to the hotel bar, have a cocktail, where do I go to dinner after this? So like, why is that guest staying with you? Is, I think, a huge question that hotels don't really think about before the arrival process, which I know for me, just how I'm traveling, why I'm traveling is a huge reason, or it's a big tell with how I'm going to interact with you, your team, and what I want to be doing while I'm traveling. So it all goes back to personalization, though.
Yeah.
Right.
And personalization has been such a buzzword, though. It's like, it's like, it's like, how do you do it without being cheesy or repetitive, right? Where it's like, okay, if we just do a tray of chocolates, I think Bashar Wali said this on his TED Talk that I think like I listened to years and years and years ago, but he's like, anticipating of my needs is not leaving a cold, like wrapped, or not even cold, a warm wrapped tray of cheese and cookies or chocolates that's been sitting out since 1 in the afternoon and is now no longer cold, fresh, or even enjoyable. So it's like the personalization part is great when it's actually personalized. It's not a kind of SOP for everybody, right? Where it's like just a checkbox on the to-do list. So it's how do we make personalization personal again? That's the real question. Steve.
Absolutely. And he was like, oh, he's not a fan of the handwritten cards as much as I am. I am still a sucker for the handwritten cards. Maybe it's because I haven't traveled 1 billion miles like he has in the past year. But no, I love the handwritten cards, even if it's just a little something. Like I appreciate the time you spent to write a card on, say thank you for staying with us. So, but I agree. Like, let's be unique. Like the Lafayette, how they were unique, something memorable. It stood out instead of leaving the warm cheese tray and maybe a glass of wine or something like that.
A glass of wine. Yeah, that's all melted and got all the what do you call it? The drizzle of the
condensation on the side.
Condensation. Yes. Words are hard as a podcaster sometimes. So thank you for filling that gap.
I gotcha.
No, I love it. 100%. No, it's very true. Well, Steve, I feel like we did get to geek out a lot about podcasting, which I could keep going on for forever. And I think these topics of hospitality kind of trends or even conversations we're hearing is really great too. But what's one thing I really love asking my guests is, what's something that gets you really excited that you don't get to talk about enough?
What is one thing I get really excited about? I am like, it was funny. We were watching, my wife and I were watching a show last night, and we were talking about if we had a midlife crisis, what we would do. And my thing was, I'm like, I would need to reset. I would need to go back to Wisconsin, and I would need to like sit on a lake for like a month and like kind of just regain my roots and stuff like that. And I geek out about Wisconsin. That's my favorite thing. So if you ever want to talk to me, Wisconsin, you can earn a quick way to my heart by bringing up Wisconsin and the Green Bay Packers. But, that's one thing I love to geek out talking about. But, podcasts, hospitality, that's always fun. Like, I mean, hotels have become such a passion, for me over the past few years. So, I am a nerd about the guest experience. That's kind of how I got into hotels, is through the technology side on the PMS. I was in DC, and I'm like, who has some of the coolest tech in hotels right now? And I found Stay in Touch. They had an awesome mobile check-in platform. And I'm like, that is really cool. So I got super excited about the guest experience. So kind of like what we were talking about today, with personalization, the guest experience, and hotel experiences. I'm kind of a nerd about all that. So if you ever want to talk to me about that, feel free to reach out, and I'll gladly set up a call with you.
I love it. And then another question, I'm very curious on your response. When you're telling friends or new acquaintances at either a networking event or through an introduction of a mutual friend on what you do for a living, and then you tell them that you're on a podcast full time, what's their response, and how else, like what other, not questions do they ask you, but how do you explain like what you do? Because a lot of people, even when I talk to my parents, they're like, oh, it must be hard running a podcast. I'm like, oh yeah, you would know. Because they think it's like hopping on, talking, and then it's out, So I don't know. I'm just curious, what's the way you explain it to new people or to friends in your world to ask you?
Yeah. my mom's like, I still have no idea what you do. Like she listens to the podcast. She goes like, I just don't understand the business behind it. Like you're going to travel, you're doing all this stuff. It seems awesome, but like, how are you making money? Like they don't that process is, kind of foreign that, we rely on advertisements. Right. So, I think people find
Do they ever ask you how weird it is? Like, they're like, how did you meet this person that you're talking to today? And you're like, oh, through whatever. And they're like, you're meeting with people online that you haven't met in real life. And you're like, yeah, 100%. Got a DM on LinkedIn and now we're chatting. So there you go.
Absolutely. It's like, well, how do you meet these people? It's like, probably reached out on LinkedIn, or if they work for a hotel, may have cold called them. And they're like, what do you cold call? It's like, yeah, that's how we get guests. It's like, I don't have an executive assistant here doing everything for me. So it's like, I'm the one, me and David are the ones setting everything up. But it's funny that, I had a friend, they were in town from Denver, and I'm like, hey, like I got a conference coming up. I'm super busy, won't be able to make it to lunch. Let's do another day this week. And they're like, what are you talking about? You have a podcast. Like all you do is have people on and talk for an hour a week. And I'm like, yep, that's it. That's all I do. Like it's super, super simple like that. But no, I don't, they don't see, all the work that goes into it, behind the scenes stuff. And that's like, you think about, professional athletes too. Like you see them once they get to that stage, and I'm not saying we're LeBron James or anything, but I'm just saying like, you didn't see all the work that goes on in the back end for them to finally get to this point where, you can make a career out of it. So, I just laugh it off. I think it's hilarious. And I'm like, I'm not going to complain about my life. We get to sit here, talk to people and learn about people and talk about hospitality. Like it's truly one of the best jobs I could ever have. Like I use Bill Walton's quote all the time. He always said, thank you for my life. And I feel the exact same way. I'm like, I couldn't do this without great people in hospitality. So, I appreciate it all. So that's nobody really takes it seriously though. So
no, 100%. I was like, I'll let them have that perception until they come to me asking to start their podcast, and then I'll start showing the behind the scenes, and then they'll be like, oh, just kidding, I don't want to start one. So it's
I had a buddy come into town, and he's like, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. Like, what do I need to know? And then we went into it, and he's like, it's a lot more than I thought. And I'm like, it can be. If you want to do it right, it takes a lot. So, but again, no complaints coming from this side. So it's a blast. It's a blast.
Same. 100%. Well, I love it. And it's always fun to geek out. And I'm sure we'll have you back on in the near future to go more deeper into actual industry stuff. But from my side of the microphone, I will say this is probably one of my favorite episodes in terms of just being able to geek out. I don't think, this was for the listeners, this was a low lift episode for me because it felt natural to just talk to a friend about what we do and how we do it and kind of the things that go through our minds. So not that saying that my other episodes in the past aren't my favorite or haven't been enjoyable. There's just a different kind of dynamic to it. So I want to say thank you for taking the time to be on the show, but also my famous last question is, if you had one link to send everybody, even though we'll put all the links in the show notes, what's the number one link you want people to go to connect, reach out, or be a part of your network and world more often?
themodernhotelier.com. That's our main podcast page. You can reach out to me there. LinkedIn is also, I'm active there. You can find me there. But you go to modernhotelier.com, tells us all about the podcast, has our episodes there, and then there's a link to our media website as well on themodernhotelier.com if you're interested in any video production content.
Awesome.
But
I love it.
I appreciate you having me on. Well, this is fun. I don't get to geek out about podcasts with too many people. So this was a fantastic time. I love what you all do at Hospitality FM. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to personally. So it's an honor to be on it and join with you today. And we're excited to have you on the Modern Hotelier one of these days.
Let's go. Well, you heard it here first,
Absolutely.
Slick Talkers. You got to grab the links, tune in, all the things, and obviously like and subscribe to the Modern Hotelier podcast for all of your hotel and hospitality content on top of what you consume already. So want to give you a big shout out, Steve. Thank you so much for joining me. To the Slick Talk listeners out there, thank you for making this all possible. And to our editors and producers who make all the magic happen, you're the best. We love you. And we'll see you all again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.